Hello everyone, welcome to Metazoa Brewing and welcome to your Saturday evening Post Week in Review. My name is Chris Wakefield. I am the marketing manager for the Saturday Evening Post.
I'm Nicholas Gilmore. I'm a staff writer at the Post.
I'm Troy Brownfield, also a staff writer.
A lot to get to this week. I want to talk about a few things, but first, let me remind you that a one-year subscription to the Saturday Evening Post is only $15. That gets you 6 new issues of the Saturday Evening Post directly to your doorstep, a digital subscription, and so much more. You can get that over at SaturdayEveningPost.com/subscribe. Again, a one-year membership is only $15. First thing, you wrote a piece this week that I fell in love with, but it broke my heart. I had a lot of mixed emotions about your cat meme photography piece.
Yeah, so this was, as you know, I'm sure many people are familiar with lolcats, cat memes. They're pretty popular across the internet.
Piano cat.
Keyboard cat.
Keyboard, sorry, keyboard, I'm not. I'm an old person, sorry.
Organ cat, whatever. But there was a photographer over 100 years ago, Harry Whittier Fries, who actually sort of pioneered this dressing up cats and other small animals and photographing them. He's from Pennsylvania, and he did this kind of at the dawn of the postcards becoming really popular. So he became pretty successful making these cat and puppy and piglet photographs for postcards, and then that moved into like magazines and books.
And they're in human-like poses. They're
Very
anthropomorphic.
human-like
They're like
poses.
they're doing a lot of different things that us as humans, some humans, would do.
Well, and that's why it's kind of like drawn criticism from people who are saying either like he has to be like abusing these animals to make them do this, or maybe they were like dead and stuffed, which I don't think is the case. I think that they are alive and well, but looking at them, it's not. You can't be positive. I didn't find any research that says
And
authoritatively.
he says he did not hurt them.
He says that he didn't hurt them. Very, very cute photography, and it appeared in
kittens.
it appeared in Child Life, which was another magazine owned by our company,
Curtis Publishing.
Curtis
He doesn't know who
Publishing,
we
right.
work for.
Saturday Evening Post Society.
Because I have photos around my house, framed photos from an artist who does this with frogs. Frogs playing basketball, frogs doing taxes, and the way he does
they're
it. No, they're alive, but
Oh.
he stands them on stands and stuff, and then he takes a green screen and removes the apertures from the frog. So
No green screen in 1905.
exactly. So interesting piece. You can see the photos and read the piece from Nick over at SaturdayEveningPost.com. That piece is up now. A piece you put up this week, Troy. 5 diabolical assassination plots. You were really excited to write this piece. I don't know why or what you've learned from it.
I'm not going to share what I've learned because that's plausible deniability. This was inspired because 40 years ago this week, Georgy Markov, who was a Bulgarian writer and dissident, had moved to London. He was writing pieces critical of the communist regime, both in Bulgaria and in Russia, the Soviet Union at the time. And he was walking across Waterloo Bridge in London and felt a sting in his leg. Turned around and saw a guy with an umbrella get into a car and drive off. Turns out he'd been shot with a ricin pellet out of the umbrella, which poisoned him, and he died 4 days later. Now, if you're a fan of Breaking Bad, perhaps you've heard of ricin. It's a really
If you've ever died of ricin poisoning,
really
you know
terrible,
it's not fun.
terrible.
It's the scene in The
thing.
Americans as well. The
Yeah,
series with the
see,
umbrella.
which a lot of
Hate it
people
when that
suspect it
happens.
was Russia that had something to do with it. But as you dig in, there are a lot of these really surprising and, like we said, diabolical plots over time. And we talk about, the plot to kill Rasputin. We talk about a writer that was recently poisoned with radioactive isotope, possibly slipped into his tea.
Wow.
He had been a former KGB agent. He had defected. He was working for the BBC as a consultant and a writer, and got taken out with radiation poisoning, possibly after criticizing Vladimir Putin.
How many attempts were made by the U.S. government to assassinate Fidel Castro that we know of?
We know of 638 plots.
638 on one guy.
Now and
wanna
they
die.
talk about this in the piece. One of the ministers of intelligence in Cuba at the time articulated a breakdown of how many attempts were made per president between Eisenhower and Bill Clinton, and
Jeez.
that's kind of interesting. These things involved exploding cigars. Castro was an avid diver, so there was a plan to put an explosive seashell in the water near his boat so that when he got close to it, it would explode and kill him. I didn't really articulate this in the piece because it was kind of a longer story, but there was a woman that they hired, the CIA, who was going to assassinate him by putting poison into his face cream
Wow.
that he used. There were all kinds of just crazy things associated with this, and it went on for years. Like I said, from Eisenhower to Clinton, at least that we know of, because
That's
these are declassified.
Crazy. All right, you can read that piece over at SaturdayEveningPost.com. All right, our next piece comes from Nick talking about presidents on late night talk shows, and this is something that spawned from Richard Nixon's anniversary on Laugh-In.
Yeah, so about 50 years ago, Richard Nixon, in his presidential campaign in 1968, was on Laugh-In, where he uttered the famous line "Sock it to me," which was the 60s catchphrase that I don't think anybody's really sure what it really meant. But
Him
a lot of
saying it
people
made it
said
sexier.
Yeah, definitely. When you think of sex icon, you think
Richard Nixon.
But this sort of, Nixon and Kennedy had both been on late night talk shows in the early 60s before. Not necessarily to the extent comedically that he was on Laugh-In.
Right.
That kind of set a different sort of standard for a presidential campaign and what a presidential candidate really could do to try to connect with people.
And your piece looks at these presidents who went on these late night talk shows.
Yeah, and it wasn't as common of a thing with certainly not Bush Jr. or Reagan, maybe a little bit, but not to the extent of that they're trying to make people laugh and show people that human side of them. But with Bill Clinton
Right.
playing the sax, that was a big one.
And he got criticized from George H.W. Bush about that. George H.W. Bush,
Right.
I would never demean the office by going on late night television.
Yeah, and then George Bush went on
How'd that work
Letterman
out?
and read. Well, Bush Jr. went on Letterman and read the top 10 things he was going to do once he got in office. He was already elected at that point. And then with between Obama, Clinton, and Trump, it's like
Now it's a regular thing.
it's a very regular
Do
thing.
you know how a lot of people know that Nixon was on Laugh-In?
how a lot of people know that?
Yeah.
Oh, how is that?
Do you know?
No.
The first person to win $1 million and wants to be a millionaire, that was the question.
That's right.
And
That was $1 million question.
yes, that was which president was on the show Laugh-In, and this is the guy who called home for a lifeline, and everyone thought he was going to ask his dad the question. He's, "Hey Dad, just calling to tell you I'm about to win $1 million because I already know what the answer is." He was the
Where's
first
my
ever $1 million
$1 million?
winner.
I know.
Well, everyone knows it because of him though. So
Okay. But
anyways,
no, and there is that question of, beforehand we had a lot of presidents who never did anything like that, and the presidency was maybe more sacred, and not supposed to be that sort of, carnival as far as
Right.
the campaign goes. And I don't think anybody can say that presidential campaigns anymore aren't carnivals, but at the same time, that comedic, pop culture, humanistic aspect of presidential campaigns is still kind of strange, and I think being negotiated.
if you could have any president on your late night talk show, who would it be?
Probably. Lincoln.
Lincoln? Okay.
Yeah.
Thomas Jefferson.
TJ. Okay. I'd pick Calvin Coolidge because he's the most reserved and quiet.
That's
So I
right.
would work to get him out of the show a little
Try
bit.
and make
so.
him brag. I think Jefferson would make French fries and tell you all about
Lincoln would be easy to
His
poke
own
fun
special
at.
Bible. Well, Lincoln was a great storyteller. We won't go on a Lincoln tangent. Sorry. All right. Reminder: you can subscribe to the Saturday Evening Post. A 1-year subscription is only $15. That gets you 6 new issues of the Saturday Evening Post, exclusive dinner benefits, and so much more. You can follow us online, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, of course, at Saturday Evening Post. We're online at SaturdayEveningPost.com. Nick, where can we find you online?
I'm on Twitter at Darwin Jr. with a Y.
Twitter at Troy Brownfield.
And you can find me at Wakefield Report. That's all we have for this week. Thank you again to Metazoa Brewing, and we will see you all next week.